So the lecture number 3 on the topic of we are going to discuss the verb in the course of contrastive grammar of the English and Ukrainian languages, and so the verbal characteristics generally in the both in the compared languages in both languages. Well, so of course I wish you good mood during the lecture, and we all can have something to drink during the lecture and enjoy it. Yeah. So me too. I'm making a drop of coffee, and we'll start. Okay. So now of course generally what we are going to do. So the verb and its morphological system, the verb and its categorical functions, that's for sure, and two sets of the verbal forms, major, the finite and non-finite forms of the verb, and of course the unique role in the sentence. So we shall start. Before that, during the second lecture, we have discussed with you that, so generally when we speak about the the language, sorry, we speak about the system, organized and structured. And within the system, we differentiate different subsystems, which also are structured according to some parameters. They're called categories in grammar. And we describe each word according to these parameters, and we refer to different groups, which are called the parts of speech. And these parts of speech, they are like separate subsystems, smaller systems within a large system of the language. And as I mentioned, we characterize these words according to parameters, the categories, here it is, you can see, yeah, according to their meaning, lexical, grammatical, lexical, it is what they denote, and in reality, so some nominative function to give the name to some phenomena, some object, idea, action, and so on. And grammatical, it is so general within the language, their role as the noun, as the verb, and so on. Well, and of course, if we speak today about the verb, because previously we spoke about a huge system of nouns in both languages, then today it is another huge subsystem and very important and notional within two languages and generally any languages. So the verbs, their grammatical, lexical-grammatical meaning is to express an action, and and that is why we have a lot of different parameters, because actions can be different. So from the viewpoint of its formal characteristics, we are going to speak about stem building elements typical for the English and for the Ukrainian languages, because by these formal characteristics at once we recognize, it's easier for us to recognize which part of speech we refer, the noun, the verb, the adjective, yeah, and so on. And then, of course, having this information already formal, we move to the meaning, yeah, to inside of this word, generally to treat it as the verb, for example, and not as the noun. Because, for example, transport, to transport, and transport look the same, but once we put to, we at once acquire, so ascribe the meaning of action and treat it as the verb. Well, once it's just transport, then we treat it as a noun usually. Or within the context, then we can recognize it as the verb, but it is according to the functions already in connection with other words, yeah? And of course, bilateral combinability with nouns, we can discuss, so it is how they are combined with other words of the language, so with which exactly they can be in combinations, and then of course already within the sentence they perform some functions. So that is today we're going to describe the verb according to these parameters in both languages and find out, of course, the main purpose for us, not just to compare, but to find out similarities and different things in order you could use this information in your future practice as interpreters, translators, and so on. Okay? Well, so we move uh, to this information. So lexicogrammatical meaning in both languages, we can speak about the typical meaning to express an action and states and processes. So these are connected things, so general idea, some action, yeah, to express in fact, the general meaning of the verb, it is to express processuality, so something that is in process. So it can be an action, it can be a state, or it can be a process itself. So for example, work, smile, walk, break, and the state, want, belong, know, etc., etc. Sorry, it's my French. My French at once. My mind shifts to French. Okay, so then I can't figure out which sound to pronounce because sounds are a little bit different in English and in French. Yes, so sometimes I'm sorry with this word, which is Latin, but it's so often used in French that at once my mind it interprets as the French word. So for mispronunciation, well, two processes, for example, grow, change, die, and so on. Well, and typical stem building elements, of course, here it is if we refer to the form because it is the meaning, it is what inside, and once with this meaning packed in a word, so we can, of course, then see some typical elements of this word, which it consists. Okay, so for example, in the English language, these can be the suffixes like ate, facilitate, en, strengthen, ifi, beautify, ize, organize, esca, equis, and in Ukrainian at once we recognize the verb to these endings. Ти, брати, брать, тисяч, сясі, братися, молитися, молитись, and so on. Well, so then once we speak about some general ideas, some general concept of verbiality, that is all these elements together, yeah, like, yes, this flower which consists of different elements that can be described separately. So it is the ability to express actions, processes, and states, just the way also it is shown here in this image of floating, yeah, the parts of the flower. Well, so the meaning of the state can be rendered he's sleeping as the verb to Ukrainian in speech. Yes. Then he is asleep in speech. In Ukrainian, it's still the same because it is the state in English. It is special forms that express special words. They begin with the prefix a, express the state. In Ukrainian, we don't have that. Well, we can just render він знаходиться в стані сну, something like this, but in fact, usually we use when split. Well, and his sleep was interrupted by the noun. So it can be also from the Ukrainian, for example, or in Ukrainian as well, we have the meaning of verbiality, processuality can be expressed by the noun because so generally the noun, the very important function of the noun, it is nomination. It's given name to something. Yes. So and of course actions they can also be nominated. Yes. So given a name, then it is a noun. Of course, for example, sleep. Not in all the situations, but very often it's possible. So the categorical meaning of the verb, then it is the process presented dynamically, developing in time. Either it is a state, but it's the state at a different moment, definite moment, the definite moment of, yes, of reality. So the morphological properties, let's have a look. Here we have, yes, several of them. You see that once we speak again, I emphasize this idea that we're speaking about the system, because all these verbs, they are connected between each other by meaning of verbality or processuality, that they express that meaning. So it's a general characteristic of all the verbs. Secondly, they are connected between each other because they correspond to specific and quite clear rules of composition. And here we're going to describe this. These are called derivational means to build up, to create a verb. And we have a limited number of them. And of course, we recognize the verb by these formal characteristics. And certainly the main, why we consider it to be the system, because all these elements, they perform the function in the language to express an action, state, or process. Yes, and that is why in the sentence they usually are the point, the point of communication, of communicative center. Yes, so they present the situation in which manner, because they express time, place, and action. Okay, so when, but by formal characteristic, we can say that in the past, in present, future, or now, because it's continuous, yeah, for example, or it's just finished, it was before, it's perfect, or it is the action that should follow by future form, yes. So then when, usually we observe from our place where we are right now, from this position, we choose the verbal form. In the English, it's especially important to do that, to compare things with the moment we speak, and we choose to express past, present, future, and so on, and a lot of things other. These are general for both languages, but for English there are more specifically, because we can in the past express 4 different nuances of the action. At present, the same 4 different nuances, and in the future, the same. Yes. So for that reason, we just, with the help of just verb, you see, you can express time, place, where, corresponding to where we are and what we are speaking about. And of course, the action itself, we express prosociality. That is called communicative center. Well, once we've decided that it is a system, now let's discuss what combines all these verbs within the system, for example, of the English language. Of course, it's typical affixation. So, for example, UN, UNDO, do and do, yes, we just combine and we receive the verb and undo, yeah, or it can be the suffix IZE, organize. So we just add this to the verb, to the word, to the stem, and form the verb. Conversion, it is when we had a noun out of which we can receive the verb. Not with all the nouns, it's possible, but English is analytical language, and it's quite possible to do. So it means that we do not add anything, just particle to show that it is the verb, and that's all. Well, and in this form, it is the initial form of the verb. It is called conversion because nothing is added, just the stem is used. Well, text to text, to snow to snow. Reversion, reduction, yeah. Proofreader to proofread. So it means that, yeah, we just take away the typical suffixes or endings of the noun if we use this type of creating the verb. Yes, and so add particle to and consider it to be the verb already, and work then with verbal suffixes and prefixes with the stem. Compounding, so when you see two words and more existing separately in the language, but they are composed together as one word, presented as one word, and in the function of the noun. Black male and to blackmail. Yeah, so then it is, as it is one word, it should contain one principal stress. While when we speak about two words, of course, each of them has the specific stress. Blackmail, to blackmail. And sound replacing type can be also used. Food, feed, to feed, yes, by which we recognize that it is the verb and not the noun. And blood, to bleed, for example. Semantic stress, transport, to transport, that is what I mentioned, that we just leave the same stem, nothing changes in the formal characteristic. We add just particle to, and then we use, of course, with this stem, all the possible endings and suffixes of the verb, typical. But in this case, we also add semantic stress, which in pronunciation only noticeable because when it's a written speech, so then it is the context that rules and gives you the possibility to figure out the meaning. While in speech, of course, it's clearer because we regulate and express this difference in language function and language units that we use by means of the stress. Transport to transport. So by this we understand that we are dealing with two different parts of speech. Comparison, look for, look down, look through. It is just when you add post words, yeah, post fixes, which are called, and so all together they compose a separate meaning. Because when they use separately, they each have their own meaning. Once together, they have some definite meaning of this group of words. For example, to look for differs from to look down, and of course differs from to look through. And yeah, but together they, that is what I mentioned, compose a separate meaning. And phrasal verb derivation, to have a swim, it's typical for both languages, by the way, and in the Ukrainian language, it's also considered to be a class to use, so high top, yeah, of language, better. Yes, it is enhanced usage of language when you use not verb but verbal phrase with the noun to express the same thing. Of course, we can use to swim, there is such a verb, but to have a swim, it's considered to be a class up a little bit because so generally the simpler language means that you use short words, short phrases, not full syntax, mispronounce the words. Yes, you do not sound clear, so you are in a hurry or something. It makes the effect, yeah. And it is, of course, colloquial. So this is gonna wanna in the songs, it's not good, yeah. It's, you shouldn't learn this for your speech because you are educated people and you are to present this through your speech, that you have your higher education, not just education, yes, without the higher certificate about the higher education. Once you have obtained the higher education, you are not in a hurry. You should speak properly and pronounce, I'm going to do something, not gonna wanna do something. It's good maybe for children, you see, for friends quickly, I don't know, in some informal, very, very informal situation. But once you are a mature person, so you should show yourself, yeah, and of course be clear. So that is why you shouldn't learn this slang. You should know about this, that's for sure, because you're a linguist. You should know all the words, good, bad, no matter which. You should know all of them because you are specialist in language. So you should know all groups of words from top to the bottom. You see, all of them, and use all of them. You should be able to use all of them. Wanna, gonna also, you should be able to use them according to the situation. So you see, so of course the top class and the bottom, they refer to specific situations, and we as linguists, we should feel the situation, and once it's appropriate to use, I don't know, not high language, because you will sound strange. Of course, you shouldn't do that. Why should you, okay, behave strange? You should behave according to your group social with who you communicate. For this reason, we learn language deeply, and yes, we should learn correct forms, know about incorrect forms, and use according to the context everything. So the next one, it is just I will put everything in order I could see the scope, yes, of the slide. Well, so bilateral combinability, that as I mentioned to you in this diagram, yeah, so we are moving with this diagram. According to the diagram, bilateral combinability, it is bi-sided. Yeah, so the verb is in the middle, and what is on the left, what is on the right, you should know, yes, what you can do with the verbs. So we're speaking about both languages, and first of all, it is the combinability with the object of the action. For example, he kissed Mary, so it means that after the noun, usually it is something of nominative characteristic. Він поцілував Mary, it's also the same in Ukrainian. And adverbs, because they give the quality, they describe the quality of the verb. So then we speak to walk slowly, йти повільно. Functions of predicate. So finite, he wanted a drink, він хотів випити, and secondary predicate or predication to express. So what is the difference in fact? So predicate, you know, it is the main verb of the sentence. Without it, we don't have the sentence. He wanted a drink. Wanted, which expresses that it is he, which shows that it is the past, which shows that it is single action, which shows that it is state, yes, and so on. It's not an action. So it is the central verb. It is the predicate of the sentence. It's very important. And of course, without this, we can't speak. So for that reason, the verb has essential role in the sentence. And secondary predication, it is the verb in non-finite form. They are called verbings. Sometimes it's like synonym to non-finite form. Finite, those which can express all the categories, the person, number, tense, aspect, yes, and all the state, all these logical categories. And those which are limited, they cannot express person, that is why they are called non-finite. Невизначені. So non-finite, we cannot define who is speaking, he, she, me, you, yeah. But as far as they are verbs, around them, there is some situation expressed. And that is why it is called the secondary predication. It is the predicative, but not full, okay? Because we have the main one, the principal. For example, watch him swimming. The watch, we understand that it is now. Yes, you watch, for example, I watched can be, so we can differentiate the person and him swimming by the form swimming. Swimming. We cannot differentiate. It was yesterday, today, tomorrow. You see, we cannot say who did this. So for that reason, we can just relatively, according to this verb, say something, but without this verb, we can't. Well, then it means that we express some predicative situation that somebody was swimming, but without full characteristics of the verb. Well, and of course, the syntactic valence of the verb, it is the functions. It's here we speak about, I have taken this picture because we speak about valency. I suppose you've heard that word from chemistry. Of course, it was borrowed by linguists from chemistry because, okay, not to create something new, and generally it describes the situation, the processes analogical to the processes in chemistry. So valency means the ability to be combined with specific element. In our case, so we can speak about obligatory valency, like here, I saw, and we can't put the point, you see, the full stop, because it's not clear. We want continuation. The verb requires obligatory valency. We should add some object. What? Answering the question what. I saw what? The film. And optional valency. Sometimes we can add, for example, yesterday. Yeah, it refers, we put the question from I saw when, yesterday. So this word depends on the verb, but it's not obligatory. We can omit, okay, the idea will be clear for us, okay? So then we speak here about these two types of valencies. And certainly, as I mentioned to you, each verb according to grammatical meaning, because it has lexical meaning to nominate some action in relative state or process. Well, and of course, we speak about some grammatical meaning inside of this form, yes, verbal. So, what verb can contain from the viewpoint of grammar in its meaning? Information about the person, about the number, because once we speak about, for example, I am speaking, he is speaking. So we change am to is because first we speak about different persons. I, it's the first person, and he, the third person. And we change it according to the number. He is, it's singular. I am is just specifically also singular, but it's specifically to I, yeah, the person, the main person of the world in the English. For that reason, it is written with the capital letter always, yeah. It's not in the Ukrainian, by the way, but in Ukrainian also the verb shows я пишу, ти пишеш. With endings, we express also person, number, we express tense, of course, we express aspect, whether it is continuation, whether it is perfection, perfect action, whether it is indefinite action, yet, or whether it is perfect continuous action. Well, and of course, voice, passive, active, or reflexive, yes. For example, in Ukrainian, митися, so the action is directed to the person itself, to the subject itself. Well, so then also we can speak about the category of mood, whether it is the indicative mood or the subjunctive mood. Yes, whether we express real action or desired action or unreal action, even sometimes. So this is all about the mood and the category of order. That is how we organize everything in the sentence. Once we have several verbs, we should know how to organize them and which form out of okay, around 45 forms of the verb in the English and a lot in the Ukrainian language, because in Ukrainian language we have also these endings specifically expressing person, number, yeah, and each group of these characteristics can be expressed within the ending. So that is why, okay, I can't say for sure how many forms we have each verb Ukrainian has. Yes, it's very long story about, because a lot of because of these endings. But in the English, around 45 forms of the verb each verb can have, yeah, contains in its paradigm. And if we should decide which of them to choose, okay? Oh, that is the category of order. Well, classes of the verbs. First of all, as I mentioned to you, we should discuss the two huge groups into which we divide all the verbs in the English. First, let's start in the English, but in the Ukrainian language as well. At once, I will mention to you the peculiarities of each of the languages because we are comparing things, yeah? So first of all, the general information. The finite verbs, as I mentioned to you, they create predicativity in the sentence. It means predicativity again. It means that we express some situation. Once we speak about the situation, not just verb from the dictionary, to write. I want to express I am writing. So once I use am writing, from this form, the listener and the speaker puts this information, and the listener, of course, reconstructs this information from the form. At once reconstruct that I am writing, am writing. Okay, it is now, it is first person, it is in progress, the action. Yes, at the moment of speaking of the person, and so on. So we express a lot of things. Well, and we can speak about indicative, subjunctive, and imperative moods here within these paradigms that we can express. While once we speak about the second group, which are called verbids, so that is that they have all verbal characteristics, but together with other characteristics, you see, additional, and they cannot serve the function of the predicate of the sentence. They can be part of the predicate, but not full predicate, while these can. Why? Because verbids, as I mentioned to you, they can't express the category of person, and they can't express directly the category of tense and number, of course. So these are the infinitive in Ukrainian as well exists. So two groups in both languages exist, and within these groups of verbids or non-finite forms of the verb, you can use finite and non-finite. It's easy to remember. All the term verbids, yeah. So the infinitive in both languages, the participle, something close to the participle English one. There is in Ukrainian like дієприслівник, дієприкметник, but they're specific a little bit. We will discuss it during the next lecture. And the gerund, which is typical only for the English language and is absent in the Ukrainian. That reason we should know about that, because while translating from and into, yes, we should render the meaning somehow. We should find something in the Ukrainian language which is absent. Yes, and some equivalent, some substitution, somehow to express. How we will discuss, of course, during the lecture, but generally there is no such form in the Ukrainian language. In accordance to semantic and grammatical criteria, so verbs then can be divided into notional, semi-notional, and functional. So notional, those which can perform full function of the verb. So all this, they can have finite forms of the verb, can have non-finite forms of the verb. They can serve the function of predicate, predicative if they are used in the form of verbs, yeah, and so on. Then semi-notional, those which partially can function, yes, like verb, not full paradigm they have. For example, the modal verbs. So what is specific about them? That they do not require some notion, some auxiliary verbs to build a question. They build them themselves. But at the same time, they are only part of the predicate, and they need some other verb to form the full predicate. For example, I can't say I may. So within some context, yeah, within some speech, but it presupposes that there is some verb which we do not pronounce. It exists, but we just do not pronounce because it's clear from the context. For example, may I take your pen? Yes, you may. Means yes, you may take my pen. So that is, we just do not repeat in order to shorten, yes, to abbreviate our speech. And secondly, of course, to avoid repetition, not to waste the time. Yes, it's clear from the context. Well, but semi-notional verbs, just from the very beginning, when I start speaking to you, I can't say I must and put the full stop. Must what? Yeah. So that is why they require another form of the verb together with them to compose the predication. And of course, they do not require any auxiliaries. They perform themselves this role, and that is why they like notional and semi-notional. They can be like a little bit of functional words, yet like auxiliary verbs. And they do not contain and express the full paradigm of the verb in respect of suffixes and prefixes. For example, the verb must has just one form. Yes, for the past, future, present, we use just must. Well, can has only two forms. Can, could. Just compare things with any other verb which can have 45 forms. Yes, of course they are a little bit with redacted, reduced functions. Well, so then, if we speak about the structure, morphology, it's, you remember about the structure of the word. It's elements which compose the verb. Then we can characterize both verbs in the Ukrainian and in the English languages as simple, so without any prefixes, suffixes, no affixes. So consistent of mere root. For example, to write, to smile. Yes, in the Ukrainian it's more difficult because навіть пити, їсти, ти, it is already suffix, you see. So yeah, a little bit difficult to speak, but we consider that simple, it is without suffixes, prefixes, but with endings. Yeah, because Ukrainian it's synthetic language and it contains always the endings. Well, derived, it is when we have some root plus some affix, prefix or suffix or both. It depends, yeah, on the situation. For example, nesti, prinesti, or in English, do and do. Compound, it's two stems together, yeah, can compose one word to blackmail. Yes, that is what we used in English, and the same in Ukrainian. We have perikotipole, composed of. So it's noun, yeah. Okay, but verbal also like this are composed. So перекоти поле я взяла є слово, але це іменник у нас. Well, yeah, що у нас там є is compound. Well, okay. So nothing comes to my mind. So there are some examples. Yeah, during the lecture we'll find some proper examples to illustrate. So and composite. It's if compound they are written together, then composite they are written separately, but are treated as one unit to express one meaning. Yes, to look for, шукати, to look after, So take care of something, of somebody or something, yes? So changes the meaning, absolutely. Um, okay, so then the type of the verb conjugation. Okay, so here it is the difficult situation, especially in the Ukrainian language. Uh, we all suffer while speaking Ukrainian because we don't proper practice. We should practice as any language, as a native as well. And we have in the Ukrainian language that difficult system of conjugation that if we come across the verb which we haven't practiced using some specific form of future or yes, something like that, it's difficult. We are not sure about whether we correctly can add all these formal characteristics to express, for example, future, yes? Наприклад, митися, митимемося, so how to write all that, yeah, and so on. So we should drill and learn. And if it's митися, it's typical verb which we use. And here there are some verbs which are rarely used, so then we are not sure how to compose. We should look through the dictionary. Yeah. So in the English, it's a little bit easier, but in respect of conjugation, we have irregular verbs in the English language, and yes, we should learn them by heart because nothing to do, they have specific conjugation. A weak, strong, or mixed double nature. Weak, uh, yes, it is when we should learn. Strong when we address ending in D, for example, in the English language, and mixed some verbs they can have both variants, yeah. And for example, learn, learned, learned, and learned, learned. So they exist parallelly. And you can choose. Or need, the verb need nicely can be illustrated here. It nowadays we can be the witnesses of the process of hybridization of this verb because it can be used as the modal verb need do something. We don't need any auxiliaries to build up negation, need do not do something. We don't use particle to, need I do something. So it works and acts and behaves as any modal verb. But we can also use it as notional verb. Do I need to do something? You don't need to do something. So we use to particle, we use auxiliary do to build up negation and questions and so on. And hybrid form, it is when you can use it as modal, but with particle to. So it builds up a question, but I mean, need I to do this? But use particle to, like mixture, you see? Well, everything's correct from the viewpoint of grammar nowadays. All three variants to use it. The same help, help to do, and help do. Uh, it's okay. British English, of course, it's more conservative and it's more preferable to use properly help to do something. Yeah, but American is more flexible because of a lot of people, refugees, and so on, using the English language and coming to that country to work, to live, and so on. All the time, these migration processes they influence because many people they mispronounce, they use more simpler form, and they become a norm of the language once they are too often repeated, so they compose the norm. Okay, so lexical syntactic classifications, yeah? So here we have the valency of the verb. Yes, here let's have a look at what we have. And yeah, 1 second. We have avalanche to snow, so nothing is, it's snowing, we don't need anything. So it doesn't require to add anything. It expresses the full situation clearly without any additional elements. We can add, but it's not obligatory, yeah? So snow heavily, for example, yeah, and so on. Monovalent. So, for example, she is smiling. So then we can use something at me, for example, yes. So from one side, or from the left side, we can use the subject, the only required element. Bivalent in both sides. He has taken the book. Take, and we want to do to add something, yeah. And okay, so we add just one object and subject on the left and on the right hand of valency. And polyvalent, it is well, we can add several objects to one verb. For example, she has given me a book. Yeah. So who, me, give what book. So both objects, me and book, they correspond and depend on one the same verb. And also on the left hand combinability, we can see the combination with the subject. The type of predication we partially mentioned about this complete predication when it says the function of the predicate and fully, yes. And in complete predication, I saw what the film. Uh, we should add, yes, the boy walks. It's complete predication. We do not require any element. And I saw it's incomplete because it requires the element. So again, it's about the valency, and as the result of this, we have types of predication. And the semantic and syntactic functions within the sentence. So here we can speak about notional, those which can perform the function of the predicate, and semi-notional or functional verbs, which, yes, I mean notional, they can express lexical meaning and they can function in the sentence as a predicate. And semi-notional, it's a mistake on the slide, semi-notional, so both can perform like modal verbs, so they can be functional. I mean, they can build up questions, and at the same time, they realize the lexical meaning of modality. For example, obligation or request or permission or um, prohibition, for example, yeah, and so on. And functional, those which are not translated, they have lost their lexical meaning, and they perform merely the function of to build up some form of the verb, negative or questional, or for example, perfective or continuous form of the verb. Okay. Well, and then we move to the next. English notional verbs split into two grammar subclasses which are not found in English. Regular verbs and irregular, that we have discussed a little bit, but just to fix here, as already peculiarities of the English language compared to the Ukrainian one. So it means that nothing to do, no explanation for us and excuse, but I mean for Ukrainians, but to learn these irregular verbs because they have special rules of forming their past forms. Well, and regular, you know, it's just if we speak about the past, we use the ending ed. And here it is bind, bound, to take, took, taken, and so on. So, you know, all of them. Some verbs are of mixed nature. So some, the second form is like regular, and the third one irregular. We should learn that, yes. So there are also invariables. So cost, let. Then we move. Here it is. What we should refer to the semi-notional. So it's not only modal verbs, but also link verbs. Link verbs, they're called so because they always go together with some other part of speech to serve as the function of the predicate of the sentence. In Ukrainian, there are often these link verbs It is usually it's the verb to be, the most typical in those languages. And usually in the Ukrainian language, it is omitted and is substituted by the punctuation mark, yes, as a dash. And okay, so let's have a look. So these link verbs, they can show the state together with some other part of speech. For example, he grew older. Вона стала дорослішою. It doesn't mean that she really, like a plant, has been growing, yes, up to that moment, but it means some changes in the state of the person. And so it is grew in this respect is considered to be linked verb. So by the way, verbs, they can change their function, some of the verbs which typically are used in the English language to express the states, like turn red, почервоніти, turn white, поблідніти. So in this context, together with adjective, they are always combined with the adjective, not with the adverb as any other verb. They express the state. And that is why they are called link verbs, because without this characteristic which expresses state, adjective, adjectival character, they, well, cannot be used separately. But be attentive. These verbs, they can be notional also in some contexts. For example, the plant grew in my garden, grew fastly. So then if it's not a state, it's an action of growing. And then we use, of course, not adjective, we use adverb as with any other action. Yeah, because adverbs give characteristic of the action, quality of the action. One more typical English link verb, it is the verb to seem, and after which we use also adjectives, not adverbs, because we express the state. In the Ukrainian as well language, вона здається гарною. Здається, so it's also the link verb. Because it can be substituted by is to be. Вона є гарною. She is beautiful. You see? Well, it's like synonym, but with the shade of meaning specific. Well, so then here you can see when we compare things in both languages that we have both in both languages these groups of verbs. Also here are in Ukrainian вважатися, доводитися братом, сватом, and so on, зватися Миколою, and so on. Це вважається, зветься правдою. And most of the English link verbs of being, do not, being, yes, and of becoming. We have several groups of them. So they do not have any direct equivalent in Ukrainian and can be substituted by the verb. It is, or it feels, it tastes, it looks, it smells pleasant. Це або воно є приємним на дотик, на смак, на вигляд, на запах. So we can't translate it sounds great. Це звучить гарно. Ну, в українській ще є, наприклад, якийсь еквівалент звучить непогано, да? Ще можна якось так перекласти. But, for example, in the French language, there is no such an equivalent because the sound, it produces the sound. And we speak about it has the state of being, for example, tasty and so on, you see? So we speak about the state. So that is why in some languages we should find some other equivalents. And that is why it's important to know in detail grammar and grammatical these nuances which, yeah, by comparing two languages, you should know what to do once you come across such specific features of one language existing in the other. Okay, so then link verbs of becoming, to get, to become, ставати, to turn, робитися, ставати in Ukrainian. For example, he became gray, він посивів, by the verb, we translate by one verb, but not by the group of verbs as in the English one. Grew older, posterior, and also with groups of words, grew stronger, став міцнішим, wood, the wood turned red, зробився рудим. Well, the link verbs of remaining, also the third group. Here it is, remain, залишатися, keep, стояти, stay, залишатися, continue, also залишатися в якомусь стані, продовжувати. Well, the winter continued damp and wet. Зима залишалася сирою та вологою. So as an example, some more examples you can read on the slide later. Well, what about modal verbs? In the English language, we have a lot of groups of the modal verbs because they all express different shades of modality. And generally, it is a quite difficult topic, because there are a lot of nuances in the English language and peculiarities that you should know how to express them because they do not coincide in both languages. That is why it's very important to know in detail which meanings each modal verb expresses and yes, how many of them and in which manner. A lot of nuances, so usually the students learn this topic in practical grammar during one semester, only modal verbs devoted to the modal verbs. Because, as I mentioned, in English there are a lot of peculiarities. And as you can see from this slide, we speak about should, слід, треба, ought to, слід, with the difference between there is a difference between them and you should know these shades, yeah. Have to, мати, зробити, like obligation from the circumstances, yeah, from outside. Be to, again, but it is more about orders. Yes, I am to be at the meeting. Я повинна бути на зустрічі. It's like my professional instruction, so it's obligatory. It's like order for me because I work and should be able to perform my professional functions, yeah? Okay, so then we move to auxiliary. Would, shall, and will do not have yes, equivalent. That is why we should find in the Ukrainian language, and that is why you should know all the meanings of those verbs. Yeah, pay attention that shall and should, these are two different modal verbs, while would and will, this is one verb, modal verb, will in two forms, present and past. So these are also according to the nuances. And auxiliary verbs, be, do, have, shall, will, should, would, well, they correspond to the Ukrainian бути in all the situations, yeah. Будемо мати щось in future, yeah, and so on. But in Ukrainian also, it's classy. It is more about your education, level of education, when you use not the analytical way of forming the future, я буду мати розмову, but я матиму with the help of suffixes, prefixes, and endings. That is really classy because it's difficult. It's difficult even for the Ukrainians, not only for the foreigners. Okay, so then English analytical word morphemes that we have are used to express the categorical meaning of continuous aspect, yes, negative and interrogative forms, perfect forms, passive voice, imperative mood, and subjunctive mood. Yes, so this is all about analytical way of forming and expressing some grammatical meaning, because as I mentioned, in the Ukrainian language we use endings and prefixes and suffixes, yeah, to do that. So let's compare things. Continuous aspect, I am, or I was, or I will be working, yeah, and so on. You see? So that negative interrogative, we use do, did, or if it's about continuous and perfect forms, then we speak about these auxiliaries have for perfect, for passive, it's the verb to be. For imperative mood, it's the verb do or don't. Yes, do come in, заходь вже, да, ну заходь вже. So to emphasize the idea, because we can say come in, заходь, а якщо ти ну заходь вже, do come in, yes, in English we should use the auxiliary. Well, and the subjunctive mood, okay, so it's again a lot of, here it is maybe more generally expressed, we use were, it's the only format that was preserved from Old English for the subjunctive to express the unreality. So all the other verbs, they don't have just only one verb to be, it is the form were. And all verbs, they have subjunctive one form. It is the form of the infinitive without particle to, used with all the persons. For example, I be, you be, he be happy. I be happy, you be happy, he be happy. So for all the persons, nothing changes. I use the verb to be because it's clearer for you to illustrate, because if I use I smile, you smile, you cannot notice here the subjunctive mood because it is the same as in present simple. Well, but subjunctive mood presupposes no change, no endings at all. And we use this with all the persons, okay? Well, and so what I wanted to mention, it is, when do we use it? Because I used for you, maybe you do not know how to translate it. I be, you be, yes, and so he be. Well, so it is translated побажання. Нехай я буду щасливою. I be happy. You be happy. Будь щасливий. He be happy. So when you write, for example, postcard, yeah, with greetings and wishes, it's old-fashioned, it's stylish, yeah, it's high top. Modern version that you can come across, it is with the modal verb may, which is also not translated. It is also one of the, it becomes an auxiliary for the subjunctive mood, to express the subjunctive mood, but it is modern version. May I be happy? Нехай я буду щасливою, so equivalent in Ukrainian. May you be happy? But I be happy, you be happy, it's a little bit high because it's old-fashioned, you see? And of course, not in all the context. If you speak with your friends, of course, you shouldn't use I be happy, you be happy. May I be happy, may you be happy. Because it's just, yes, you are not linguists at the conference, I don't know. Yes, and so on. So according to the context, of course, but you should know this form in order to generally understand how to translate, how to render, and secondly, when you can use it to show your education, okay? But not in all cases you should demonstrate your education. As I mentioned, there are some cases when you should, and there are some cases when it's better to be like other people, yeah? Not to be a stranger in the company. Well, and that is why we also learn and compare languages, not just because it is the theoretical course that you should receive some points afterwards, yeah? No, it also develops your analytical skills, it widens your background, and it gives you possibility to better understand your language, native, and, for example, the English language in our case, and how to deal with them once you want to express some meanings or to render some meaning from the English to the Ukrainian languages, okay? So, the functions of the verb бути in the Ukrainian language, it is to express future, text буде перекладений perfect forms, ніби й задрімав був зразу, це був задрімав, так? So it is like in English, have fallen asleep. Yes, it is perfect form. And passive, text був перекладений, so here it is equivalent, just absolutely corresponds to the English. And the subjunctive mood, якби я був знав, можна сказати, якби я знав, it is already subjunctive mood, but more stylish, yeah, it's more high top to say in the Ukrainian, якби я був знав. It's old-fashioned also, it's not used nowadays. They're often in the colloquial speech, but in the literature, in your compositions, you should use that because of your education, you should know all these forms and be able to use them. Я був би прийшов до тебе, якби мав би був час. So you see how you should speak. So that we speak simplified in a simplified version of the Ukrainian language as well as in the English. Better to know full version of the languages in order to feel all richness and all that pleasure of communication, because you receive this pleasure as well when you can express more precisely and more and fully, yes, your ideas and thoughts, because no language can express everything we want. Yet here it is in our mind, we have a lot of feelings, emotions, meanings, background, education, okay, experience, so on, and these all we have here in our thought. But what we receive as the sentence, of course, it is okay, poorer. It cannot express fully. And so you feel this suffer when you start learning another language and you don't know all necessary words and forms to express your thought, you suffer because yeah, it's really terrible when you need to speak some simple words and simple phrases when you want to express all richness of your thought and idea. So that is the same about native language, or for example, the English language as yes, as a second language. So, and here it is, subjective and objective structures that exist in the English language. Okay, let's have a look. He got up and left. Yes, so it reads the subjective group. Then he saw Mary crossing the street. It's objective group because it goes after the verb and together with it. And he gave a letter to me, again, objective characteristics, because we combine verb with a letter and it is the object. So it's objective relations. Okay, then aspect of nature. In both languages, we can speak about terminative verbs and non-terminative verbs. Terminative verbs, in their meaning, they have this inherent meaning of final point of the action. Open, it means that action contains the final point that it should stop the action not very long. Open, I opened the door. It means that I'm not, but open, it can be express also a long action, but first it expresses and contains this limitation, limit of this action, okay? Jump, come, stop, yes, and so on. And non-terminative, those which do not contain the limitation of the action. So it can be limitless, you see? Carry, нести, walk, ходити, гуляти, work, працювати. That is why workaholic has negative meaning, because it contains this, and generally work contains negative meaning, negative connotation, because it has no stopping point. It doesn't contain, our mind is blowing up when we use this word, work. I go to work. It means that when you should stop, you don't know. So psychologically, it is already difficult, you see? Even if you know that you have some timetable, there are often that it is violated and you work without ending and you continue working at home what you haven't finished at work. So In the Ukrainian as well, працювати so contains a little bit of negative connotation. Because yes, this influences the way we have named the action. Yes, it influences the way we treat it and our state of mind. Okay, so then here it is about the reflexive verbs in both languages. They are, in fact, not only in Ukrainian. It is mentioned here that found only in Ukrainian, like with expressed by form of the verb fully. Yes, so we take just verb, nothing more. In English, wash myself. You see, so we add the pronoun word combination to express the same meaning. Okay, for example, змитися, змагатися. Okay, you see all of them, they can have different shades of meaning, but by its form, the Ukrainian language has such type of verbs, and the English, no, it has to express this meaning in word combination, as I mentioned, yeah, together with the pronoun, reciprocal pronoun. So, reciprocally reflexive, indirectly reflexive, general reflexive, and active objectless reflexive in the Ukrainian language. Yeah, our language is difficult, so we should know all these details which are absent in the English. Well, and passively qualitative reflexive, for example, гнутися, ламатися, м'ятися. Well, impersonal reflexive, безособово зворотні, не спиться, не їсться, не живеться, не лежиться. Well, a lot, yeah. And for example, we have in the Ukrainian language, that is allomorphic feature, now it's for sure, because these are impersonal verbs. Yes, they, in the English, we don't have that. But, okay, so that's peculiar to the English language. Well, so just finish with the stem. It's again repetition, but yes, examples some in the Ukrainian language for you. I would like to finish with the generalization of yes, of the fact that generally the verb, it is so difficult form in both languages because of all the meanings that and categories that it can express, and the main function of building and being the center of communication. So the predication, yeah, to express who, when, and what are doing. So this implies in both languages a lot of peculiarities. It's not to be covered within one lecture, within 2 lectures or 3 lectures even, yeah? The general idea that you should understand here, that we speak about complexity of this part of speech, because of this ability to express situation, and verbs exist in all the languages, the nouns and verbs, because they are central. They perform the function of the subject and predicate in the sentence and express the thought. Yet without them, we cannot communicate. And that is why we will continue, of course, speaking about it, because we haven't covered all of them. So the main thing here is that most categories, they correspond in both languages, but there are some nuances because the languages are different. English is analytical, the Ukrainian is the synthetic language. Yeah. So thank you for your attention. Wish you have a perfect day. Yes. And for some group, there is just a coffee break, online coffee break, because we are going to have a seminar afterwards. See you. With the rest of the students, I will see you during the next week during the seminars. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.